The Rebel Capitalist Show.
So let's go back to Davos and the World Economic Forum
lovely
here.
Davos.
We're talking about central bank digital currencies a little bit. And I know a lot of I can't remember, probably the gal from the IMF, she's always talking about it. But they're talking more and more about this ESDR. And my base case is they want the digital SDR to be the global reserve asset. Now,
100%.
not necessarily that we're trading SDRs back and forth at a local level. So I think within the US domestic economy, we've got a dollar, call it FedCoin, central bank digital currency, but the reserve assets these central banks are holding on to is the ESDR that is issued exclusively by the IMF, which, it always takes me back to that Henry Kissinger quote, which is very applicable today. He said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control countries. And if you control money, you control the world. And so I think that's their way of controlling money and then potentially controlling the world. What do you think about that idea?
Actually, prior to 2009, I knew that when one currency goes away, something else has got to go in to replace it. But I've actually been talking about that probability since 2009.
The ESDR being the global reserve asset, not necessarily
correct.
Transactional at a local level, right? Okay.
Correct. And that's because the SDR is composed of as many currencies as they want. So if they wanted to put every local currency in the world as part of the SDR, they could do it. And it makes the most sense because then you can simply, you could trade it globally and just translate it into the local currency because it's already a part of it. So, and it's been around since 69. The SDR has, not the ESDR, but whatever. They're all ESDRs really, because they're all electronic. They're not like real currencies.
Right.
But the part that bothers me the most about the IMF and the control with the SDR is their stated goal of having all of the assets held on a token and broken down. So I have $100,000 in equity in my house, right? And now it's on my wallet and it's broken down into teeny weeny increments. So I see this blouse that I want and I don't have the earned money from it, but I have the equity here. Right. And we've been really taught and trained to think short term, 15-second blips, right? And we're consumer driven. So in that way, you volunteer to spend all your money, and going back to Davos and the WEF, you will own nothing, but I don't think you'll be happy. And who are you going to blame when you're the one that made that choice?
I see. So they just give you the option of instantly spending any equity you have in any, so your 401k, oh, don't worry about that. We'll give you the liquidity. Just go ahead and spend it right here because we'll tokenize the asset, or I don't know how they'll do it, but they'll basically give you access to your equity without having to sell, or from your standpoint of your home, without even having to refi or to do a cash out refi.
Exactly.
You don't have to go to the bank, and you don't have to pull the whole amount out. You can just pull out however much it costs for those movie tickets Friday night. And this increases the levels of consumption. And people wake up one morning and all their home equity is gone because they've spent it in these $10, $20, $100 increments because the central planners gave them access, and then the equity is gone. Then effectively they own nothing.
And who can you complain? I mean, if you go in and if the government or the IMF or whoever came in and stole your house, you know about it and you probably would attempt to fight them.
Right.
But when you're the one that's positioned, and it's all perception management, right? When you're the one that has actually spent that equity, you can't turn around and point a finger, right? Because you're the one that did it.
Yeah. And you know, what else is interesting is if you think about the world moving into this basically global fascism.
Yeah, well,
You know,
100%.
then the way the World Economic Forum calls it, this public-private partnership, you know, basically governments and these big mega corporations.
Yeah.
But they're trying to wipe out the small and mid-sized business, have all of that aggregate demand go into these mega corporations like Amazon, I believe, because it's easier to control one person, one CEO, than it is to control a million CEOs.
Yep.
And if you're talking about the people spending all of their equity, if they're spending those dollars or currency units in with fewer and fewer and fewer corporations that the World Economic Forum influences, then basically when you say who will own everything if I own nothing, basically that purchasing power, that equity goes from the average Joe and Jane directly to mega corporation XYZ that is influenced, let's say, to put it mildly.
And also, can't they also
the World Economic Forum, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then if these few corporations own everything, you have the illusion of choices, but who controls the prices?
Yeah, but even if that corporation doesn't own even if their name isn't on the title.
Oh yeah, it doesn't
even
matter.
if it's still your name, who cares if you have zero equity, because all of that equity essentially has gone to the mega corporation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in 2008, they obviously bailed out the banks.
Yeah.
Did they do that in 2020? No, because 2008 was too close to it. But that's when the system died. But did they do the same thing this time? Yes. But this time they gave stimulus, which is minuscule compared to what the corporations got.
Right.
But it was about the people continuing to spend, just like UBI is and will be about the consumers continuing to spend and the corporations locking in those massive profits. And if this corporation, I mean, one corporation owns Coke and Pepsi. So you think there's a competition because there's Coke and Pepsi. But if the same entity owns both, is there really competition?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, because a lot of people say, well, Lynette and George, what are you talking about? Because that's free market capitalism. That's the way it works. You guys wanted capitalism. Well, now it's time you reap what you sow.
And I do want capitalism. I'm a proud capitalist.
But they don't realize, but they don't realize that that's fascism. That's not the only way you can get these mega corporations for long periods of time. And now you can have them, temporarily, but for over long periods of time and growing bigger and bigger and bigger is through the assistance of government.
Exactly.
So government allows them to eliminate their competitors, and government props them up. Government bails them out. In a free market system, we would not have corporate bailouts. We would not have the Federal Reserve coming in and setting up a special purpose vehicle in March of 2020 to buy corporate debt to make sure that the interest rates they have to pay when they roll that over isn't increasing to a level that puts them out of business. That's not free market capitalism.
Correct.
And that's why I always say, whenever I use the word capitalism, I always preface with free market capitalism. It's not just private property. It's all about the free market working with the exclusion of government and central bankers.
Yeah, well, we haven't had that in a while. And it goes back, right? And it goes back to turning every single asset. And it's hard to imagine, but if you think about real estate, because I know you're big into real estate, but I think it was, so correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it 2018 where real estate got its own sector on the stock exchange? And now, housing, real estate, I mean, you gotta have shelter. It's part of the mantra. You gotta have a roof over your head, right?
Right.
And that used to be like a long-term proposition. And this is still true in Europe or in Mexico, other places where that real property is handed down from generation to generation. So you have no debt on it, you have no mortgage on it, and it supports your family through many generations. But now, you're going to have real estate that's not long-term anymore. I mean, who stays in a property? Well, I do, but how many people stay in a property longer than 5 years? Well, we'll see that again. But right now, it's like in 2008, it was a piggy bank. What is it now?
Yeah, exactly. So many people look at their house first, or the roof over there had shelter at the end of the day. First and foremost, not as shelter, but as an investment vehicle. How am I going to get rich? How am I going to increase my purchasing power? When, we got to go back to thinking about it in terms of a roof over your head and not some sort of financial tool.
Yes, exactly. And everything has been turned into a financial product.
Right.
Now, when everything is a financial product, I mean, that's Wall Street loves that. I mean, that's their whole juice. And that way they get to make money, money, money. You're paying them, but you're also the one that's taking the risk. Because at the end of the day, they've made their money. And when things freeze, they're out of it, basically. But they've taken this, turned it into a financial product and sold it to you in a pension plan or an IRA or something else. And it's just paper, right? It's not anything real. I'd rather own my home or own other real assets, but then also have the ability to protect them and keep them, because this is a game. We're not really invited to play at a real level, right? So you have to make sure that you can protect yourself. And I don't want to make a mistake about this. My father was a developer, so real estate's kind of been in my blood forever. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what Wall Street has turned it into.
Right. Yeah.